Hey, it's Enigma Hood, and the heater is on, so I'm gonna go and turn that off so there's nothing in the background. Turn this off, okay. So, today I'm going to be doing a response video to this Christian named Sye Ten, and then he has a ridiculously long and confusing last name that I can't pronounce, so I'm just going to call him Buttcakes. Sye Ten Buttcakes. I don't know why his middle name is Ten, or why he uses his middle name and his full name, because most people don't. It actually might not even be his middle name. So he's just this really weird Christian guy that just shows up and trolls people. He masquerades as a Christian apologist, but he doesn't actually do that. He is a big advocate of this thing called Presuppositional Apologetics, which I did address in another video and completely refuted that position, which isn't actually apologetics, because it's an oxymoron. Because when you presuppose something, you're no longer defending what you're talking about. You're trying to basically say, you're basically sticking your fingers in your ears and saying, nah, 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 nah. That's basically his argument in as few words as possible. So, he does these videos on this other YouTuber's website, I was about to say website, YouTube channel, Bible Thumping Wingnut, which is one of the dumbest sounding channel names I've ever heard of in my life. That sounds like something that someone would make fun of Christians. Like, someone who was mocking Christians, they would call them a Bible-thumping wingnut. So this guy is so stupid that he actually chose a name that mocks himself. The guy himself is another old geezer. I don't know what the hell is the deal with all these old geezers. And they're all debating like young people. And it's not even debate. Like I said, it's trolling. So we're going to look at one video where it's just part of it, because these things, they drag on for so long, and it's mostly the same bullshit over and over again. So I'm probably not even going to do the entire conversation. So I'm probably going to stop somewhere in the middle when I get fed up and I feel like he's just repeating himself over and over again, which is what he always does. But there are a few things that I do want to refute, and I might even skip ahead to get to some of the stuff, some of the bullshit that he talks about, that I want to specifically refute. Now, I want to make a disclaimer. You cannot debate these kinds of people. They are, by definition, trolls. So if you show up on their, I don't know if this is a show or whatever the fuck they're doing, they are trolling you. The only way to respond to that is to troll them. I feel like a lot of these people, a lot of these YouTube atheists, they actually give these morons more credit than they deserve. But that's enough of that. We should get right into it.
Sye Ten Bruggencate from the website Proof God Exists, and very first Google Hangout hosted by me, and we have an atheist to speak to. Very thankful for you coming on.
Howdy-o.
You are, introduce yourself, because I'm not familiar with you.
My name's Damon Coln. I'm not going to put up my real name because there's some people here on YouTube that would really like that. I've been on YouTube for 7 years. I've been in and out of the religious discussion stuff. It's not my main thrust, but it's fun for me, basically. And I'm just here because Lasolio messaged me, and it's 7, and I just woke up, so I thought it'd be fun.
Okay. You claim to be an atheist.
Yep.
I'm going to host Sye if you'd like to speak to our friend here.
Well, you can ask him some questions first and get his background.
I'll take questions that I'm not really sure. I'm going to apologize. I don't really know who either of you guys are.
That's fine. Everybody who knows this isn't interested in coming on, so maybe you could thank Lasoya later.
Yep. Mostly Lasoya just knows me from going after the Christian who rips up the Bible, Chase Jester, so...
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's a Christian.
I just like to find the craziest people I can find on YouTube, be they atheist, be they Christian, so...
And you have your own channel, do you?
Yeah, it's DM Colm. It's been up there. I don't like do regular videos, but when I do, it's out there. Sye, you want to introduce yourself too? Well, since I got a good few minutes to go after that.
Sure. My name is Sye Ten Bruggencate. My website is proofthatgodexist.org. And yeah, I engage people who profess to be atheists and informally and in live debate. And yeah, that's about it.
Damon, let me ask you, how do you know, do you claim that there is no God?
I don't personally, because I don't have enough data to say whether or not, but I find it more easier and a little more practical to live my life as there if is not one, because from what I see, a universe with one and a universe without one would kind of be the same thing. So for my own practical purposes, I act as an atheist.
Let me ask you a question. Why don't you believe in God?
Through one of my studies of both Christianity, other religions, mostly I've been heavy into Buddhism. I never was a Buddhist, but I was like looking deeply into it and like studying the basic evolution of human ideas and human spirituality. You can just see where it comes from. It's not completely true, but the themes of the mythology are what's important instead of it. And it's not truth ideas. It's ideas of what people believed back then that we're transferring now into religion.
So why don't you believe in God?
Okay, so right there you can get an impression of the style of argumentation that this troll uses. He badgers his opponents, and he doesn't, like, the guy gave a decently, colloquial answer to his question, and if you're having an honest, just discussion, then you would accept that. Sye does not. Instead, he badgers his opponent with inane questions, like repeating the same question over and over and over again. That's not intellectually honest. You're not having an intellectually honest debate. You're pushing an agenda.
Because no one's defined it well enough for me to believe it.
Okay, would you say that you have insufficient evidence to believe in God then?
Okay, so right there, that's a key point. Sye didn't get the answer that he wanted. Look at what he's doing. He's looking down at his notes. He has like some kind of computer or written notes, and he has pre-written questions that he's going to ask his opponent, and then he has a response to any answer that he gives. So these questions are inherently rhetorical. They're loaded questions, and they're actually gotcha questions. And if he doesn't get the answer that he wants, then he puts words in the opponent's mouth and says, no, this is what you think, and therefore I'm going to respond to it the way I wrote it down on my notes here.
That's one of the ways you can put it.
If you could be given sufficient evidence to believe in God, would you worship him?
That would have to depend on what the evidence is.
If you gave sufficient evidence to satisfy your curiosity as to the existence of God, would you worship him?
See, he asked the same exact question twice. His opponent gave a response. It depends on what the evidence is. So the evidence would lead towards a specific kind of God. So for him, if he gave evidence for a kind and loving God, then that would influence his decision as to whether or not he would worship him. But Sye doesn't care about that answer. He wants a specific kind of answer so he can respond to it the way his notes are. Look at what he's doing. He's looking down at his notes so he can recite exactly how he wants to push his rhetoric. He doesn't care about the answer. He's not really listening to what his opponent is saying.
Here's the weird thing about that question. Do you know what that sufficient evidence would be?
Well, the thing is, according to my worldview, you already know that God exists, but it's a hypothetical question.
He did not answer the question. Do you know what that evidence would be? Sye refused to answer the question and then launched right back into his rhetoric.
Well, that's your worldview. It's not something I believe.
Okay, we'll get to that, but my first question is, though, if you could be given sufficient evidence on your terms to believe in the God of the Bible, would you worship him?
This is the third time he asked that question. The only difference this time is that he made the disclaimer, the God of the Bible. But this is the third time he asked the question. All he does is repeat the same question over and over again after he's gone and answered the first time.
Well, here's the thing about sufficient evidence. How are we supposed to know it's sufficient evidence? How would even I know it's sufficient evidence?
So you're saying it's impossible to prove God to you?
That's not what he said. So now, again, he's putting words in his opponent's mouth because he can only respond to his pre-written bullshit that he has in his papers. So then once he puts the words in his opponent's mouth, then he can respond. He doesn't know how to respond to the answers that his opponent's giving, and he doesn't care because he's not listening.
When we're talking about supernatural things like that, yeah, because it's really hard to denote something supernatural for something that could be just a delusion.
Do you deny the supernatural outright?
Pretty much.
So you're saying it's impossible to prove God to you?
So let's think about that. He said, do you deny the supernatural outright? The opponent said, yes. So therefore, it's impossible to demonstrate God. That is not a right conclusion, because God might not be supernatural. He's assuming things.
Impossible? You know, if he came down and handed me a cheeseburger, then I'd have to start thinking a bit. But otherwise, it's kind of hard.
Okay, so if you were given sufficient evidence, then would you worship God? Okay,
so right there, that demonstrates something very clear. So even if there is a supernatural being, his opponent is saying that there are ways for the supernatural being to demonstrate itself in the natural world. Sye ignores that and then launches right back into his rhetoric, bringing up another one of his rhetorical talking points to which he can only address. He can't address what his opponent is saying. He can only put words in his opponent's mouth.
That seems like a gotcha question. You're trying to. I see you're trying to rope me into a certain answer.
No, it's a very simple question, because the thing is, if you say you wouldn't worship him, then it's no sense me providing evidence for you.
He never said that he wouldn't worship him. That's the thing. Now, personally, I would never worship anything. That's just me. But his opponent never said that. He never said that he would worship anything. Sye said he would never worship anything.
Then it just exposes that it's not
an. You can. I don't try to close any doors. But if you can, I'd love to hear it.
Right. But the thing is, I want to see if this is worth my while.
So, in other words, what is he saying with that? He's saying he wants to know whether or not he can push his rhetoric with this opponent. If he can't, then he stops the discussion immediately and then moves on to another one. Because he's not interested in intellectually honest debate. He's a troll. And if he can't troll his opponent, then he's going to hang up on him, proclaim victory, irrespective of whether or not he actually made any points, which he doesn't. He's just a troll. And then he moves on to the next one. So every time he just proclaims victory, whether or not he's actually making any substantive arguments.
Because if you say that even if you gave me enough evidence I wouldn't worship him, then it's really pointless.
When did he say that? I don't recall him ever saying that even if you gave me enough evidence, I wouldn't worship him. And even if that is the case, what does it matter? Why do you need to worship him? Why is that a necessary condition in order to discuss God? Sye is fallacious.
You understand that, right?
Well, what do you mean by worship?
Well, you know what worship means. Would you submit to him?
See, now, there you go. There's another fallacy. Sye assumes his opponent knows what he means by these nebulous terms. Worship does not have any one set definition. You can worship in many different ways. If you're a Hindu, you can worship in a very different way than Christians do. If you're a Muslim, you worship in a very different way than Hindus do. If you're Buddhist, pagan, etc., they all worship in different ways. His opponent is not assuming anything about the terms that Sye is using, Sye is the one that's assuming what the terms means, and then is being intellectually dishonest because he's going to invoke equivocation fallacies later on for the terms that he never clarified.
I have my own definition. I want to know what definition you're working with for worship.
Well, would you submit to him? Would you thank him for your life? And would you give him praise?
So, according to Sye, his definition for worship is giving praise and thanking him. Well, I give praise to people all the time, and I thank people all the time, but I do not consider that worship, and neither would anyone else.
I would thank him for the life, and I would praise him for when he did well, but why can't I criticize him if he's doing wrong, in my eyes?
So you wouldn't submit fully to him, you would still be God then? So,
just because you don't submit fully to someone, that insinuates that you are God. So that's Sye's logic, that if you do not submit fully to someone, then you are God, or you're saying that you are God. That's a slippery slope fallacy.
I wouldn't be God, I'd be human.
Yeah, but the thing is, you would put the God of the universe subject to your standard of morality, subject to your...
What other standard of morality am I going to use?
Well, his.
Why would I use his? I'm not him.
All right. Okay.
See, let's analyze this a little bit more. Would you, if God has a standard of morality, and let's say that involves raping babies, and Sye thinks that we have to adhere to his standard of morality, then that necessarily means that we also have to think that raping babies is okay. So, obviously, we don't have to submit to someone else's standard of morality. We can formulate for ourselves what morality means to us.
Now, you joined this...
Do you have, sir, do you have kids?
No, I don't.
Okay. Say you had a son. Would you want him to be exactly like you?
Would I want to be exactly like me?
Would you want him to completely be like you and follow every little morality you have?
It's irrelevant because I'm not God.
See, there you go. He never answers the question. He just dismisses it.
Exactly. That's why the question is so weird. You're trying to put this massive, powerful being in front of me and then somehow tell me I'm supposed to worship him even though he might be a dick.
Now, watch your mouth.
See, now, that really annoys me, how Sye gets so offended when someone calls God a dick. So that just demonstrates how emotionally frail Sye is, that he can't handle anyone insulting his religion, even though his religion has many, many, many stupid beliefs. Now, I've said this many times before, that I can respect a Christian as long as they are respectful to others, but I will never respect Christianity, because it has abhorrent teachings in it, and it is stupid. And I do believe that Jesus is a cult leader, and he was a seditious fucktard. And if Sye is angry about that, he can go fuck himself.
Okay, let's just get to the fundamentals of this discussion then. So in order to discuss anything, you would have to have knowledge. You'd agree with that, right?
I guess.
And you believe that you've come from an evolutionary worldview. You believe that you've evolved, right?
I believe I came from my parents.
Yeah, but you believe in evolution, right?
Evolution seems to be a decent theory. It's supported by evidence.
Okay, so now he's going to push more rhetoric. He's putting more words into his mouth. He's trying to say, no, this is your position. This is your position. This is your position. So that he can launch back into his rhetoric. Look at what he's doing. Look at what he's looking at. He's not looking at the camera. He's looking down at his notes. Because he cannot debate. All he can do is just recite the same claptrap that he has pre-recorded.
Okay, so you've agreed that in order to have this discussion, you have to know things. And what I'm going to tell you today is that the Bible says, in order to know anything, you have to start with God. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. It says in Colossians 2, verse 2 and 3, that all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge are hidden in Christ. So the fact that you know things actually exposes that you know that God exists, but you're suppressing the truth and unrighteousness, as it says in Romans. But rather than just claim that, I'm going to evidence that. I'm going to ask you a question. Could you be wrong about everything you claim to know?
So his evidence for all of the religious bullshit that he just spouted is asking a question. Now this is the same question that he always asks over and over and over again. I already refuted this in my other video where I took on presuppositional apologetics. Now usually the stance that I take with this is that there are some things that you can't be wrong about. Unfortunately, most of these YouTube atheists, they aren't used to this kind of question, so they answer it wrong. But, you know, it's not really important in this context, actually, because Sye is trolling him. His evidence for all the religious bullshit that he just spouted is asking a question. If he has evidence, you don't need to ask a question. Imagine that this is a courtroom proceeding. If you're trying to prove your position that the defendant is guilty, you do not ask the judge or the jury. You don't badger them with inane questions. You use evidence and arguments.
Huh?
Could you be wrong about everything you claim to know?
I could be, but that'd completely flip everybody's worldview at one point.
Well, if you could be wrong about everything you claim to know, you've given up knowledge.
No, I haven't.
Right? Well, let me explain that.
Wait, no, I haven't. I just claimed that
Pardon?
I might be wrong. I never said everything I know might be wrong.
Well, my question again, I'll repeat it, and if you want to change your answer, that's fine. Could you be wrong about everything you claim to know?
Yes, and so could you.
Okay. When you say you could be wrong about everything you claim to know, you can't make knowledge claims about me. But I'm going to explain to you why, when you say you could be wrong about everything, you don't know anything. Let's say you asked me the speed of the road outside my house right now. And I said it's 30 miles per hour, but I could be wrong. Do I know it?
You have an educated guess.
But do I know it?
You don't know it. No.
Right.
But that's a question that doesn't have anything.
If I could be wrong, I don't know it.
The question doesn't have anything to do with the premise.
Well, let me tie up the loose ends then. If I say I could be wrong, I don't know it. And when you say you could be wrong about everything, it follows that you don't know anything.
And I could say the same thing about you and God.
Well, the problem is, when you admit that you can't know anything, you can't make any knowledge claims about me.
And when you're claiming that most of your knowledge comes from God, and you have yet to prove that God exists, then your knowledge comes from nothing.
Do you know that?
Do you know that?
Well, look, you're the one who's given up knowledge.
I haven't given up knowledge. You've claimed I've given up knowledge.
Okay, well, let's go back to the beginning then.
You've made a premise. You said that I've given up knowledge if I say I don't exactly know everything.
That's not what I said.
I'm sorry, that was my fault. You said it's if I'm possible that I don't know everything. It might be possible that I don't know it all. It might not possible that all my knowledge might be wrong. But in that, you have the same burden. What
I asked you was if you could be wrong about everything you claim to know, and you said yes. So therefore, you cannot make no.
Then you can't be wrong ever?
No, I'm saying that there's some things I can't be wrong about.
There are some things. What things?
Right. Pardon me?
What things?
Like the existence of God, for instance.
How do you know that?
Because he's revealed it to me like he's revealed it to you.
How do you know that?
Because he's revealed it to me such that we are all certain
Because he hasn't revealed it to me.
Well, the thing is, you don't know that.
You think he revealed it to me.
Damon,
I don't
Damon, let's have a regular discussion, not a, interrupting each other. Let's let each other finish a sentence before.
So at this point, actually, this guy was getting some momentum on Sye. Because Sye was doing the same exact thing to him. And then once he started doing it to Sye, then all of a sudden his butt boy jumps in and says, hey, no, don't do it like this. We're supposed to be trolling you. You're not supposed to be trolling us. So he was actually getting Sye back. Because that's how you badger a person. You just ask them inane questions. But in this case, he was asking legitimate questions to Sye that Sye could not support. How do you know that these voices that you're hearing in your head, Sye's going to say, oh no, I didn't say that. Actually, that's what you're implying. You're hearing voices in your head and God is telling you stuff and he's saying, I am God. The problem with that is that you don't know if that's really God. You don't know if it's a devil. You don't know if it's the boogeyman. So he's going to say, his excuse for that though is, God reveals himself in a way that makes it absolutely certain. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean a damn thing. It's not evidence. It's not a good argument. He's just asserting it. He's saying, I know God exists because God said so, and I know that it's God because it's God. If this was a Hindu saying it to him about Vishnu, he would never accept it because he knows that it's an inane argument. So we have the same position, and we refute him, but he never acknowledges it because he's intellectually dishonest and a troll.
We respond.
Okay.
Well, that's fine. I'm just exposing the fact that when you come to a Google Hangout to have a discussion, you presuppose knowledge. But when you say you could be wrong about everything you claim to know, you've given up knowledge.
No, I've given myself the intellectual honesty that if I am wrong, I can admit it.
Okay, could you be wrong about that?
Yes, everything. Even you. We all could be wrong about everything.
How do you know what I could be wrong about if you could be wrong about that?
Okay, so now Sye goes back into his badgering thing. This is his favorite thing to do. He doesn't actually listen to what his opponent says. He just says, are you absolutely certain of that? He basically just says that over and over again. He responds to the last thing that the opponent says and then attacks him with ad hominem fallacies. These are all ad hominem fallacies because it doesn't matter what the opponent's position is. What matters is whether or not the information being conveyed to you is true. And it doesn't matter where it's coming from. So he's basically saying, what you're saying is wrong because you said that you can't be absolutely certain about anything. It doesn't matter what his position is. What matters is whether or not the statement itself is valid.
We have to look at it.
Okay,
That's where the process comes in.
See, the thing is you've given up knowledge, so you can't make any knowledge.
I haven't given up knowledge. You claim I've given up knowledge.
Okay, you say that you haven't given up knowledge. Tell me one thing you know for certain and how you know it.
This is a lighter.
Okay, now you told me you could be wrong about everything. Could you be wrong about that?
Possibly, if this is the Matrix, which would be awesome.
So then you don't know it. So I'll ask you again then. One thing you know for certain and how you know it.
This is a lighter. And because I keep...
Well, you just told me you could be wrong about that.
I can keep figuring out that it's the same thing. It's repeatable. It's testable.
So, you told me you could be wrong about that.
Possibly.
Okay, so you don't know it.
If there's extraordinary circumstances.
So you don't know it.
What's wrong with that? Why can't I go with practical knowledge?
You're trying to tell me that you know things for certain. I said you've given up knowledge. You said you haven't. And I asked you for one thing you know for certain, and you said this lighter.
You've asked about No, I'm sorry, sir. You've asked about a possibility. We're not talking about reality now. We're talking about possibilities.
Okay, what do you know for certain?
I exist. Cognito ergo sum.
How do you know that?
I think, therefore I am. Are you going to dismiss I think, therefore I am? Actually,
I'm going to show you why that's a logical fallacy. It was actually an atheistic philosopher, Bertrand Russell, who exposed that René Descartes' syllogism was a fallacy. And I'm going to explain it to you. Look at the first premise. The first premise is I think. The second premise is in order to think I must exist. And the conclusion is therefore I exist. The problem is the conclusion that I exist is assumed in the first premise, I think. In order to not beg the question, the first premise should be there is thinking going on. And you cannot get from there is thinking going on to I exist. And it was an atheist philosopher that refuted René Descartes. So you can't even know that.
Okay, so with this one, he is invoking an appeal to authority fallacy already. He's saying, well, since this atheistic philosopher said blah, 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 therefore it's true. Now, the second problem is that it depends on what you mean by exist. Now, we can go into a very long discussion about this, but the fact of the matter is that we have to exist. If you're thinking, you have to exist in some form. It doesn't matter if this reality actually exists, or if this is a simulation, or if this is just the imagination of God, or whatever. If you are thinking, you exist in some form. So he is quibbling over the word exist, essentially. He's saying that, wait a minute, you can't logically draw from that you exist in this reality. No, that's not what it is. You exist in some form.
Do you think we're all just one monolithic entity?
No, as a matter of fact, I know that we know things for certain because I profess
That's not the question I asked.
Pardon me?
Do you think all of us atheists are one monolithic entity?
No.
Okay, then. Why bring up atheist philosophers? I'm talking to you. You're talking to me.
I'm just showing you that it was an atheistic philosopher that refuted the syllogism that you used to prove your existence. You don't have to accept what he says, but I'm just telling you that it's been refuted. And it's not a Christian who refuted it. It was an atheist that refuted it.
Okay, fine, whatever.
So you can't even know you exist.
I'm still sitting here without, God handing me a cheeseburger. If you could do that, that'd be great.
Well, what I say is the proof that God exists, that without him you can't know anything. And you've displayed that you can't know anything.
You kept trying to prove God, and yet, for some reason, this mystical, magical, supernatural, all-powerful being is yet to appear.
Well, I'm saying that you can't make sense of...
someone this powerful, shouldn't they be able to do whatever they want?
He is.
Then wouldn't it be simple just to reveal himself to me because he hasn't yet?
Well, I'm saying that with every knowledge claim you make, he has revealed himself. Because you can't make sense of knowledge without him.
That's just taking one definition and putting it into this next definition.
Well,
now you're claiming that God is knowledge.
No, I'm not saying God is knowledge. I'm saying that God is necessary for knowledge.
Why?
And the proof that God exists is that without him you can't know anything. Well, I'll explain that to you if you like.
No, you've completely made up these definitions. They're coming from nowhere.
Well, you said why, and I'll explain.
Which is one book, by the way. There could be other books that claim other gods are the basis of knowledge. What about those?
Could you be wrong about that?
Could you be wrong about that?
No.
Quit asking me that. Let's stop talking about could I be wrong? Because yes, I have admitted I could be wrong.
That's right.
But,
well,
that's the thing.
Therefore, this debate is over.
Am I wrong?
Therefore, this debate is over. If you could be wrong about everything, you don't know anything. And what I'm saying is the proof that God exists is that without him you can't know anything, and you've agreed with that.
I have not agreed with that.
You've agreed that you can't know anything.
I've agreed that it's possible that I might not know everything.
No, not.
I agreed that I did.
What do you know, and how do you know it?
Now, it's all these gotcha questions. You're gonna try and loop me into saying things that'll just fit right into your argument.
That's how debates work.
No, that's how stupid apologists work.
You know that?
Yes.
Could you be wrong about that?
I battled street preachers.
Could you be wrong about that?
Could you be wrong about that? You can keep asking this question. It's going to be stupid every time you ask it.
Well, it just exposes the fallacy of your worldview.
It doesn't expose shit.
Do you know that?
Yes.
You know that for certain?
Mm-hmm. We can keep going around and around. It's not going to do anything.
Okay, so now you know things for certain.
I can know things. I can't know things for certain.
Okay. Tell me something that you know that could be false. You know it to be true, which could be false.
The foundation of this house could have a massive crack in it somewhere there. I'm not entirely sure where it is.
Well, here, let's, since you haven't left yet, what is truth in your worldview?
So this is more badgering on the part of Sye. Why does it matter what he thinks truth is? Why doesn't he provide evidence that God exists? Because he can't. Instead, all he does is badger his opponent with these inane questions. I'm going to skip ahead to one of the last things he talks about because this is mostly just the same thing over and over again. So he talks about morality at the end, and I want to address some of that.
You're talking about possibilities, which are not the same as reality.
Well, first of all, you don't know that. You don't even know if you're in the right reality now.
You don't even know jack shit because you keep asking me the same question.
Could you be wrong about that?
Could you?
No.
Have you ever asked yourself that? Could I be wrong about God?
Yes, I have asked myself that, and I can't be.
Why?
Because he's revealed himself to all of us such that it's certain that he exists.
So I know God exists because God told me he exists.
He's revealed himself many ways to you. He's revealed himself innately.
No, you can't say that about me because you don't know me.
Is raping babies for fun absolutely morally wrong?
I'd say so.
Okay, based on what standard?
Based on the standard that I don't want to hurt babies.
Yeah, but that's not an absolute moral. That's a preference.
I don't have absolute morality.
That's like you like chocolate, somebody else likes vanilla.
I'm a moral relativist. I will admit that.
Okay, so it might not be wrong to rape babies for fun.
Depending on the situation.
That's a terrible... Dude, you're just exposing your terrible worldview.
I'm not going to
That's
claim that I am like the greatest human being in the world here. If there comes a situation where that happens, maybe. It depends. But I don't get where Christians get to make that kind of claim when, you know, all that genocide in that book of yours.
You've admitted that raping babies for fun could
No,
be
I
all right.
haven't. I had said there could be a situation. I never said there was.
That's exactly what you said. It could be all right.
I don't know the situation.
I hope you don't babysit anybody.
You're just making claims about me and trying to put me out as a bad person because you've learned from that little cunt bag Ray Comfort. So, yeah.
Watch your mouth.
Fuck you.
All right. Well, you can leave now if you'd like.
Okay, so what's going on here? So Sye's basically trying to make an appeal to emotion fallacy. God exists because if God doesn't exist, then raping babies is okay. So let's go along with what the opponent is saying. Personally, I don't necessarily agree with what he's saying, but let's just entertain it and see what happens. He believes in moral relativism, and he explained his position. What was their rebuttal to his argument? They attacked him. They said, "You are, I hope you never babysit." That's their rebuttal. They haven't actually refuted his position at all. They made a complete appeal to emotion fallacy. And with that, that's all I really want to talk about for now. I'm probably going to refute a few more of his other videos because he's peddling so much nonsense that someone has to dissect his bullshit and expose him as a troll. Because that's exactly what he is. He's a troll. I actually think that he's an atheist, to be honest with you. I really don't think that he's a Christian. I don't think Eric Hoven's a Christian either. I think they're atheists, and what they're doing is they're pretending to be Christians so they can make money. Because these people are big liars. They pretend to be Christians because this presuppositional apologetics bullshit is essentially nothing more than Christian self-masturbatory nonsense. They are jerking each other off, saying, "Hey, look at what we can do. We can badger our opponents without actually demonstrating that our position is correct." They are making excuses. They're trying to invoke two wrongs make a right fallacy. They attack the opponent. They say, "You're just as bad as we are. Therefore, our circular reasoning, God exists because God exists, is correct." That's a fallacy. I think Sye loves money. I think that he doesn't know what else to do with this philosophy education that he has. I think philosophy is idiotic because all it can do is assess knowledge that's already known. It can't advance knowledge. It can't acquire new knowledge. And that's exactly why if you try to get a philosophy major, you can't get a job. But he figured out, well, you know, what can I do with this philosophy bullshit that I learned about? I have no idea if he went to college or not. He's probably a high school dropout. But he learned about philosophy, and he's trying to use it to make these DVDs, and he sells it to dumb Christians who masturbate to it, basically. They masturbate to these arguments, and that's essentially all it is. They are not actually trying to convince their opponent that their position is correct, or an audience. They're simply there to troll. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. Post in the comment section what you think. This is Enigma Hood signing off.